Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. I've been watching Presser with the new leader of the opposition, that is Susan Lee, and the Deputy Tim O'Brien. Now, I have never been a fan of Susan Lee for a variety of reasons, and I'll talk about them in a moment. But today, I was watching this presser, and I began to see a different Susan. A Susan who was more compassionate, more understanding, more reflective. A Susan Lee who was prepared to consider the mistakes that they'd made, to find ways to rectify them, to make the changes that the Liberal Party need to make in order to become competitive. Now, she didn't talk about policies and other things that they plan to do because she simply hasn't had the time at this point, obviously, to be able to do that, even though I guess she must have a sense as to what policies they wish to maintain because they're having to work with the Nationals. The Nationals have been clear about nuclear, for example, and where that sits, and the Nationals are quite clear about climate change and where that sits with them. So she must have a sense, and we don't know whether there's a battle going to erupt between the Nationals and the Liberals, because the Liberals may choose to want to go in a completely different direction. But I was impressed, up until a point. And then it just shocked me to see her undo everything that she'd done before. Now, the issue for me around the Liberal Party, and I guess generally for the population as a whole, maybe, I haven't surveyed them all, so I can't say for sure, but is this cultural divide, whether it be over the Voice and how that went, or whether it be on Welcome to Country and whether we should or should not do that, or whether it be around nuclear, or whether it is about the divide that sits between anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And, is that an issue for me that really at this point needs to be debated? Because I believe that both sides tended to fracture the debate around hate speech. Even though the government have endeavoured to be able to put in place legislation that deals with that, and so have the states. So it was regrettable. It was extremely regrettable when at the end of the speech she found the need. She wasn't even asked a question. So she'd been sitting with this issue for the whole of the presser until she got to the very end. And at the very end, this is what she said.
With a called last question, can I just add to an answer that I gave before? Because one of the biggest threats to social cohesion in this country is the Prime Minister's approach to Jewish Australians. And everything that happens overseas, and I've reflected on that with the hideous events in Gaza, has domestic implications. We have a Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, who has let down Australia in the UN. And we have a Prime Minister who is intent, it seems, on letting down Jewish Australians on the streets of our cities. And one thing I have heard consistently over the last 2 years has been this sense of isolation, fear, and real concern for our wonderful Jewish Australians. And I want to make clear that going forward we will work very hard to hold this Prime Minister and this government to account, because it is not acceptable to see what we have seen on the streets of our cities, in the universities, and to hear the stories that I have heard from our Jewish Australian community have in many cases, particularly when it's young women who are studying, it has made my heart break. So I want to emphasise that I know, and you've talked to Ted about issues with the Chinese community, and people have reflected migration policy. Social cohesion is really, really important, and we will get that right. Thank you. We've called last question. Can I just...
So my issue, I guess, is that she didn't need, this wasn't the place to start this debate. But it does indicate who Susan Lee is. She cannot let go of issues that she thinks are going to make a difference and separate the Liberal Party from the Labor Party. Now, she's referring to, like she's an Israeli apologist. And I think personally that's an issue for the government to take on as well. So it's not about Jewish people. And it's about conflating those two issues around what's happening in Gaza, the IDF and the destruction of a race of people as best as they can, the genocide that they're creating, and the conflation of that with anti-Semitism. The two are not the same. They're not. But she wants to make them the same because it appears to me, after a really good presser, that in her head she wanted to finish with this divisive statement, which simply was wrong. She should never have done it. She was doing so well until she decided to blow it all up. And I think this tells us what we've got to look forward to in the next 3 years. That there will be these culture wars, which I hoped had been dispensed with, will erupt even further. And my fear is that some of the Trumpism stuff will seep back into the Liberal Party and, regrettably for them, will not do them any good. That people will not tolerate, I think, and I think this is one of the lessons that clearly they're not going to learn, is that a divisive country being divided by this sort of rhetoric that we saw at the end of this press conference is not going to be helpful to Australians generally, and both Muslim and Jewish Australians will reject it, as well as the rest of the population. It's not going to work, and it will be a failure of the Liberal Party again and again and again until they learn that lesson. And clearly, Susan Lee hasn't. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell for further notifications. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.